They told us we were free, that we were in control of our own lives. But the truth? We were never in control. Our choices, our dreams, even our fears, none of them truly belonged to us. Because from the very beginning, humanity wasn't living. We were studying, watched, measured. We were the experiment. And here's a question for you before we go deeper. If you discovered tomorrow that your entire life was just part of someone else's test, would you want to know the truth? Or stay in the illusion? Comment below. I'll be watching your answers as you hear this story. Because once you hear what really happened, you might change your mind. They say the human race has always been curious. We explore, we test, we dissect the unknown. But what if curiosity had turned the other way? What if one night, without our consent, we became the experiment? The first reports came from a quiet town in Arizona. A farmer named Daniel McCarthy swore he'd seen a second moon appear in the sky, a pale, perfect sphere hovering above his fields. It didn't move like a star. It pulsed, as though it were breathing. By morning, the sphere was gone. The government called it atmospheric distortion, heat waves, an illusion. But Daniel wasn't the only one who saw it. Across the country, people began reporting the same dream. Lying on a table, blinding lights above, and faceless figures watching. Not men, not human, something else. For weeks, the dream spread like a virus. Entire towns whispered of the White Room. And then, people began vanishing. The first disappearance was a 12-year-old girl, Sarah Collins. Her parents said she went to bed like normal. In the morning, her sheets were neatly folded, her window locked from the inside. She was gone. A week later, an Air Force pilot vanished from his base. His locker was untouched, his bed made, his flight suit still hanging. It was as though they'd been taken out of reality itself. The official word was missing persons. But deep inside a classified Pentagon briefing, the phrase was different. Controlled extractions. One man claimed to remember the impossible. His name was Marcus Hale, a retired linguist. On a late-night radio show, his voice shook as he told the host, "They weren't just watching us. They were testing. I saw the machines. I saw people lying in rows like cattle, some awake, some screaming. And the figures, they weren't killing us. They were learning us." The host laughed it off. But the call-in lines exploded with people saying the same thing. They remembered too. Then came the blackout. On October 12, 1999, at exactly 2:17 a.m., every clock in North America skipped forward 7 minutes. Power grids failed. Phones went dead. Planes lost contact. When systems returned, hospitals across the country reported a wave of patients collapsing with nosebleeds, seizures and burns in strange geometric patterns on their skin. None of them remembered what had happened in those 7 minutes. But Marcus Hale did. "They stopped hiding," he whispered. That was the night humans began the experiment. Marcus Hale wasn't the only one who remembered. In the weeks after the blackout, whispers spread through online forums, late-night radio shows, and underground newsletters. People woke up with memories that didn't belong to them. A truck driver in Nevada swore he had seen a surgical device descend from the ceiling of the White Room and pierce his chest. He still had the scar. A nurse in Chicago said she remembered being strapped down while her own reflection in the glass. Above mouthed words she couldn't hear. And then, there was the boy from Kansas. He was just 16 when he collapsed at school. Doctors rushed him to the hospital. When he woke, he started speaking a language no one recognized. Not his parents, not his teachers, not even professional linguists. It wasn't gibberish. It was structured, precise, too precise. The Pentagon quietly collected him. His parents never saw him again. For the first time, journalists smelled blood. A reporter named Claire Donovan started connecting the dots between the missing, the blackout, and Marcus Hale's story. Her articles never reached print. Each one was flagged and deleted before it could hit the presses. Her editor warned her, "You're digging into something that doesn't want to be found." But Claire wasn't the kind to stop. She tracked down Marcus Hale. When she found him, he was already in hiding, living in a cabin in the Appalachian woods. He was frail, paranoid, and half-mad. But what he told her chilled her to the bone. "They don't just take us," Marcus rasped. "They return us. Different." Marcus described the White Room in brutal detail. He said it was cold, endless, and sterile. A place with no shadows. People lay on metal slabs, lined in rows. Above them, machines hovered like metallic insects, inserting needles and tubes into their skin. But the worst part wasn't the machines. It was the Watchers, tall, faceless beings with featureless heads, like masks carved from bone. They never spoke. They only observed. And sometimes, Marcus swore. They smiled. Claire wanted proof, and she got it. One night, Marcus lifted his shirt. Etched into his flesh was a series of perfectly symmetrical scars. Not random, not surgical, but geometric. Triangles, circles, and lines that looked like equations carved directly into his skin. Claire touched one, and Marcus flinched. "Don't," he whispered. "They're not scars, they're instructions." Meanwhile, strange reports began leaking from government labs. Entire batches of blood samples had been contaminated with unknown DNA strands. Soldiers returned from missions with organs that didn't match their medical files, and in one sealed-off facility in Colorado, a scientist discovered something far worse. A human brain, growing inside a glass tank, still alive, still dreaming. The experiment wasn't just about observation anymore. It was about modification. And as Claire dug deeper, one terrifying thought took hold. If Marcus was right, if people were being taken, changed, and returned, then how many of them were already walking among us? Claire Donovan couldn't stop. Every lead she followed pulled her deeper into the labyrinth. Every witness she interviewed gave her another fragment of the nightmare. But the pieces didn't fit, until she discovered something buried in declassified military files. It was a single word, repeated across hundreds of documents. Iteration. Project Iteration. The files were fragmented, redacted beyond recognition, but enough remained to suggest a horrifying truth. Humanity wasn't just being observed, it was being refined. Marcus Hale had said it plainly. They return us different. But what did different mean? Claire got her answer when she visited the home of Dr. Elias Conrad, a geneticist who once worked for the Department of Defense. She found him alone, surrounded by piles of research papers, his hands trembling as he smoked cigarette after cigarette. Conrad didn't waste time. "They aren't experimenting on individuals," he said. His eyes wild. "They're experimenting on the species. Every generation, every bloodline is an iteration. A test, the blackout, wasn't the first time. It happens every few decades. They alter us. They measure the results. Then they start again." Claire's voice shook. "You mean humanity is a Conrad cut her off? A laboratory project? And we don't even know what we're being built for?" Then he showed her something. In his basement was a freezer filled with samples he'd smuggled from his lab before it was shut down. Blood samples, tissue samples. Claire peered through the glass at one in particular. A human heart suspended in a jar of liquid. But it wasn't normal. The muscle tissue pulsed faintly, beating without any machine connected. And carved into the surface of that heart was something unnatural. A pattern, geometric lines, like the scars Marcus had shown her. Claire's breath caught. "It's a message." Dr. Conrad nodded. "A blueprint. They're rewriting us, slowly, quietly, generation after generation. By the time we notice, it'll already be done." That night, Claire left Conrad's home shaken, clutching a folder of his stolen research. She didn't know the men in black SUVs were already watching her. She didn't know her phone had been tapped, her movements tracked, and she didn't know that Conrad wouldn't live to see another sunrise. 2 days later, news broke. Dr. Elias Conrad had died in a house fire. Authorities said it was electrical, but Claire knew better. When she tried to call Marcus Hale to warn him, the line went dead. Static. Then, a voice. Not Marcus's, not human. "Do not interfere. The experiment is not yours to understand." Claire dropped the phone. Her blood ran cold, and for the first time since she'd started digging, she realized the horrifying truth. It wasn't just the government hiding this. The experimenters themselves were listening. Claire Donovan barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus's scars, Conrad's beating heart in the jar, and the faceless figures from the White Room. But something else lingered. Conrad's words. "They're rewriting us." She fled the city, driving through the night with Conrad's stolen research on the passenger seat. Every mile took her farther from the eyes she felt on her. Every shadowed car behind her made her grip the wheel tighter. Finally, she stopped at a roadside motel in the middle of nowhere. She bolted the door, spread the files across the bed, and began piecing it all together. The data was clear. Every blackout, every missing person, every iteration left subtle but undeniable changes in the human genome. Smarter reflexes, altered immunity, brainwave patterns evolving. The experiments weren't random. They were steps in a process. But toward what? At 3:17 a.m., Claire's motel TV turned on by itself. The screen glowed white, filling the room with a blinding light. And then, Her ears rang with a voice she didn't recognize, yet somehow understood. Iteration complete. Her heart slammed in her chest. "What do you want from us?" she whispered. The voice was calm, cold. Not want, need. Images flooded the screen. Galaxies colliding, alien worlds burning, ships crossing the void. And then Earth, the voice continued. "You are not the first. You are not the last. You are a seed, a design perfected across worlds. Humanity is an instrument, a tool, and the time of harvest is near." Claire's hands shook as she scribbled the words down, her pen nearly tearing the page. Harvest. That was the purpose. Not observation, not curiosity, preparation. The motel walls rattled. Outside, a humming sound filled the night air. Claire staggered to the window and froze. Above the parking lot, a sphere hovered, smooth, pale, pulsing like a second moon. The same one Daniel McCarthy had seen months before. Her phone buzzed. A new message appeared, though she hadn't touched it. It read, "Iteration complete. Return subject." Claire never checked out of that motel. The maid who entered the next morning found the door bolted from the inside, the bed perfectly made. The files were gone. The room was empty. No trace of her remained. And yet, a week later, a video appeared online from an anonymous source. It was grainy but clear enough. Claire Donovan, pale and exhausted, staring into a camera. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "They're not coming. They're already here. And we were never free. We were never human the way we thought. We were an experiment. And the experiment is almost over. The world never saw her again. But some remembered. And when the next blackout came, 7 years later, more people began to wake up screaming the same words in the same alien language. The experiment was accelerating, and humanity was running out of time.